Hey folks, I'm Eva L. Elasigue. I write science fiction fantasy, and this is my trilogy, Bones of Starlight, that I'll be reading for you. It's been written, hey, thank you. I'm a resident here at Make.Shift, and so this was written here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm going to take us to some scenes that include sentience in the intergalactic society of humans that are non-human, and they're called the Aquarii. And they're a little taller than us. They're bipedal. They have kind of manted legs. They're a little bit like Xenos, but they're like the friendliest Xenos you could possibly imagine. They have vibrational auric powers through their micro hairs on their tentacles on their heads, and they're extremely emotive and artistic, and they have Symbias trees in their society, and these trees co-evolved with them and showed them how they matured as a species and gained interplanetary travel in concert with these trees, and these trees have been through a terrible disaster, and I'm starting this with a performance by the Aquarii. Their foremost researchers are artists, and that's what they consider technology, artist technology to them. So a performance by their foremost artist is going to occur, and then there's going to be some perspective as events unfold. The gentleman tugged at his collar as he looked out over the floor, then to his friend. "Thank you for dragging me out. Would have been a shame to miss it. So who is this year's beneficiary for the declared occasion?" "The Genesee Refugee Fund." "Oh, what about Aquarii Home Recovery?" "Well, you see, there are still lives to be saved on Genesee. With 5 new red zones, we have to practically depopulate the planet, which you can imagine takes time. We haven't depopulated anywhere since Herelian, which had pretty much happened already." He sipped from his wine glass. "And not for generations before that. Geologists have gone from stumped to overwhelmed in their attempts at prediction. So, crisis before recovery." "I understand that." The gentleman inhaled sharply. "Bright Wave's up to perform, isn't she? I'm glad she's well enough to do the occasion this year." His friend with the white ruffled collar nodded. "Her performances are a pleasure and a privilege." The two wandered from the upper tier, where they'd left silent auction bids, nodding to others passing by in red and white. They refilled their cups at a lower tier and made their way up an aisle to take seats. Below on the floor in the center, dancers were finishing the Mobius spiral to the sound of a brass ensemble. Applause rose at the end as people filtered up the slopes and steps. An oval of light burst into glow on the now cleared floor, and the plane within elevated, revealing the lifting stage walls and spiral staircase. The double doors in the side were revealed and parted. An Aquarii man emerged and placed himself atop the stage, facing in. "That's a lead composer. That's the lead composer." She brought a sound singer. They looked at each other. Fleeting Shade folded his legs to kneel. The amphitheater had gone quiet, but for a deep bass wave washing in like breath. The place turned dim, but for a glow remaining at the door. She emerged shrouded in mist, moving by her tentacles and tendrils, carapace trailing behind her. Up the stairs, her body rolled, the mist growing as it mingled with the bass in ripples. Bright wave curled, crouching opposite the sun singer, facing in. From where she stayed, she moved a figure around in the mist like a shadow. The bass rose to the beat of a resounding wall. Flashes revealed columns like a maze, for the figure to weave through as it grew with the sound. It wove its way to the center, where it rested against something bright. The mist clarified into luminous points. More aquaria came through the door and up to crouch around the edge, facing out. There were 8, and their echoing sounds only occasionally overlapped. In a hollow, windy voice, Bright Wave spoke a 2-note phrase, and the bright something in the center showed color. She did it again, and so did another of the crouching aquarii. Again and again, the relay echo grew, until the pulse moved continuously. The central figure gripped the bright something, pulling itself up. All of them rose. The pulse changed, and the points of light expanded to fill the entire amphitheater. The music turned clear and loud. The gentleman watching from the seats waved his finger to encircle the performers. Those are Sen singers. Those are all Sen singers. Yes, indeed. Then the language began. It was amusing. No one had any idea what they were saying, but it was certainly funny. As people around the amphitheater laughed, that became the central chorus of the music. Sun rose, shining on the bright something. Its light condensed into a swirling trunk. The glow branching upward and spreading out. One by one, the 8 sun singers visited. It pulsed and sang differently to each. And as they walked away, so too did they sing differently. All 8 returned to sit around it together. The pulse continued as they watched the branching light, their gathered music illustrated above it. The door glowed again, and 8 more Sen singers walked in to fill the places around the stage facing out. The gentleman swirled his finger at this in maddening circles. Are all of them? His friend looked agog. Well, yes, and that must be nearly half of them. He gripped his armrests and looked behind him as though he could see the sky. How is traffic running right now? He noticed other audience members in discreet communication. He sank back into his seat a little. So with a little bit of an aside, the Sen singers are some of the Aquaria's most powerful artists who enable intergalactic travel. And they've walked out in order to join on this performance, which is communicating the importance of their groves, which are still suffering from a disaster. The cloud above reflected those sitting beneath. A color portal engulfed the trunk and branches, reaching the ground. Bright Wave rose and walked into the center of it, and it became a swirling mirror with sides. The inside 8 rose together and stepped through. In the amphitheater, the atmosphere changed. It seemed any point could lead to any other. These pathways became traveled by few and then by many. If people touched them, they changed. The 8 who stepped through found one of the 8 around the edge. They sat back to back and twined their tentacles, one facing in, the other facing out. The pathways extended beyond the amphitheater. In the center, Brightwave sat, leaning against the tree, which was there. She reached up to touch the billowing sheets of motion, twined and hanging from the branches. Great gusts flowed inward through the sun singers, to the branches and trunk, where Brightwave could touch them, and she weaved. The air was full of clear Aquari melodies from 8 different kinds of far away. Could this be live? He asked, holding down his white ruffles. At the word live, an unseen group of Aquarii echoed the word in confirmation. Live. He gasped, and his was not the only one. The sun singers began switching pairs, counter-rotating. Human voices became a loud addition, and the sound of a dragon. From a vantage point in the city, Toller watched the amphitheater surrounded in glowing worlds. If he coughed an ear, he could even hear it. His chuckle seemed to fit right in with the music. Then, something broke. It was wrong immediately. People could no longer hear their voices correctly, and when they grabbed for the threads, they weren't there. It was the frantic feeling of something important missing. The bright branches fell apart and floated away. The sun singer's channels fluttered. The trunk disappeared, down to the ground, until there was only a heap in which Brightwave sat. The weaving in her hands threatened to disappear, but she sent ends of it to the Aquarii surrounding her. They held to it as though suspended. The points in the sky reappeared above them. And so now I'm going to take us much further ahead in time where thank you. Much further ahead in time where some of the people who caused the disaster are now collaborating with them to remediate what happened in the course of the upheavals of society. There was a weaving now underway, quiet in announcement, but loud in reverberation. The Symbias trees were forming a new set of bonds in their regeneration. Something was happening, of the kind that happened when Aquarii first found each other with Symbias on separate planets across stars, when they discovered space travel by the songs they created in maturation with their trees. It felt very much like that, a leap that could be witnessed in a lifetime. The Vidani and the Quarii working together on this were handling it delicately, tentatively, hopefully. Many things would be changing. This was something they would do right now. Aileron Elkacid still had her lab in the Etherscape and in ship space. She wasn't the only one doing this anymore, maybe no longer even the foremost. In some respects, she continued to do as she had been doing when she'd only known the Symbias in their etheric forms. She listened and recorded with her head among the There was a lot more information now, working in communication with the ancient steward friends of their physical beings. Bright Wave lived now in deep communication with her trees, singing the grove back to life with the full focus of her entire being. The returned lost future of her people was transforming. She could give it voice, bringing memory into the present and future, connected to collectivity across dimensions. The Symbias were expressing in new symphonics, communicating between the different peoples with radical tonal shifts, bearing all the old knowledge. As she recorded her impressions in the etheric Symbias lab, Aileron was no longer arranging to decipher in as many layers as she had. Completing a session, she braided it immediately into a branch of the connected etherscape that would bring the information to other researchers who were more avidly engaged now. It was exciting and relieving having others take up the project. The Symbias were speaking with each other, with the Vidani who would learn and build with them, and with nurturing guardian aquarii. This conversation, in the sense of how the Vidani revered the energy generation of idea exchange, was creating a murmur big enough to cause deep, giant currents of power they were only beginning to understand. In the grove, where she was largely residing, other aquarii sat in receptive half-moon around Bright Wave while she streamed song with her back to a new and rapidly growing Symbias. They learned the way she formed her mind to understand, and learned the song by joining in as it came, furthering it, amplifying it, and sending it. They were understanding each other anew, and others anew, in a new time with their oldest friends. There was groundswell and flow and growth. Growth with the abundance of the expansion of joy. There was a gladness, overwhelmingly uplifting, no matter how at odds with the complexity of conflict. It was the most goodness anyone could handle, the greatest embrace of life, the rushing eagerness to become, building its own support. There was exquisite presence in its becoming self, and this was a new reality with a deep source that included each of them